Hi guys, it's Khaliah here, and right now I want to take a moment to answer any questions that you have. So it could be anything in reference to finding sellers, to getting buyers, or how to get started. So basically I want to give you an opportunity to ask me any questions that you have. I know recently I had a question where someone had asked, why do investors invest internationally? Is it because of profit? So there was various questions in reference to that. One thing I wanted to kind of say about that was that it really just depends on the investor. Most investors, if they're actually doing rehabbing and wholesaling, most people actually prefer to work locally, especially when they're rehabbing. If they don't have a big company, if it's not a big development company or something like that, most people will decide to work locally because they want to be able to monitor their investments, because dealing with contractors within itself is a whole nother business. So once you start rehabbing, you start getting contractors, you'll find that you really have to go by your properties every day to stay on top of them. Otherwise, you may tell them to paint the door white, you come back, the door is red. I've actually had that happen before myself. So definitely, I would say that most people prefer to work their deals locally, and then to start to expand, maybe based upon who they're working with. If they get a student and that student is out of town and they feel like they can manage it, I mean, there are people who do that, but keep in mind too, like especially for rehabbing, they can have multiple projects going on at one time. So let's say they're doing, I know certain investors doing 5 properties, or they're doing like a larger scale development, and so it really helps them to work locally so that they can stay on top of their investments. When people get into international investing, they're looking more at residual income. So it could be for various reasons. Like, for instance, I know in Senegal, for instance, you can get a property, rent it out as a vacation rental. Same thing in Gambia. But some of your tenants could be like the UN, Samsung, LG. So you can be renting your properties to major corporations. And so let's say maybe they wouldn't have that opportunity. They may not be in a prime location to be able to do that type of investing here in the States. But when they're in these other countries, by them doing these large or these nice high-end developments, they're able to rent to corporations and get a nice income. And maybe the cost of the land is not as much. So really, whenever you're getting into investing, you always have to analyze your deals to see, okay, well, what's going to be my return on income? How, basically looking at how much you're putting down, how much are you paying for the land, or if you're developing, how much is the construction. So you have to be able to analyze each deal individually to see whether or not it's going to work. I do know also too in the States, you have people who decide to rent different places. Somebody may decide to get a property in Florida. That's like a vacation hotspot, and people know that they can rent their properties out. So like Florida, Las Vegas. So it really just depends. So everyone uses their own discretion, but I can just say on average that most people that you come across who are going to be rehabbers, those people are pretty much working in their own locale. So I want to take any questions that you guys have, because today I said you can ask me anything. That was just one of the questions that I wanted to kind of elaborate on that somebody had asked a little bit earlier, or actually yesterday. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to just leave it in the comments, and then I'll go ahead and answer it. Hi Ashley, how are you? Do you have any questions for me today? Okay, so she wants to know about how to go about finding foreclosures. Okay, there's different ways to go about that one. So foreclosures, there's different websites that offer foreclosures where you can go on and you can buy a list. Also, depending upon where you live, you may even be able to go to the courthouse and get that data. It really just depends, because some courthouses, like for instance, in DC, you can't, well actually I guess you could go down there. But okay, so one thing I want to say about the foreclosures is that you're interested in pre-foreclosures. And it depends on whether or not you're in a judicial or non-judicial state, and whether or not, I guess how much time you have before the actual auction. Each state has their own laws. So with that one, you really probably want to start with people who are in default and kind of work it that way, because normally there's a default that's filed. Then sometimes some states offer like a mediation before they actually get to the foreclosure hearings or the foreclosure process. So it really depends on your state. You can actually probably call your courthouse and ask with the filings if there's any foreclosure filings, and if you're able to access that information. But that one's going to vary by state. Hi Brandy, how are you? Excuse me, I have a bit of a cough. I should have gotten my water. So she says, how do you find mentors? Even if you don't have a mentor, how much money does a person need up front? I think my biggest fear is offering to buy someone's house and not being able to obligate. Let's see more. And not being obligated to pay for the house. Okay, I'm sorry, I had to see the entire question. So first, let me answer a question about finding mentors. Finding mentors. I mean, I actually mentor myself, but outside of that, it's pretty much about networking. Basically, I would say to network to make sure that you can find somebody. Like, you could attend different real estate meetings that are going on and go there and just, introduce yourself to people, talk to people. And that would be the best way to probably find a mentor. Also, you could probably go online and see different people who are offering mentorship. But so I would see either online or in person at different meetings by networking. And the reason why I say this is because you may not just sign up with the first person that you talk to. You may want to make sure that you and that person have a good personality fit. Because there may be plenty of people mentoring, but that doesn't mean that you want to work with that person. Or that doesn't mean that that person is going to be willing to put the time into your success. And that was one of the questions that I answered once before in reference to how do people go about charging their fees and things like that. And so just to kind of elaborate on that, there's pretty much two different structures. You'll find some people will do 50-50, meaning if you find a deal, you give, you'll split half with them, and that's considered their mentorship. Normally the people who are doing this type of mentorship, these are people who are just looking for deals. I know people that do that personally, and just looking at what they're doing is probably not something that I would get into if I were getting started. Because some of the people that I know doing this, for instance, they could be just having you do like their administrative work, and at the end of the day, you find out that they're not even helping you to learn anything. Because basically, on that 50-50 structure, it's not really based upon you getting an education. They'll tell you, okay, you bring me a deal, I split the deal. That's how they're looking at more of a commission or a profit sharing, but it doesn't always equal out to education. And so, if you're not bringing any deals, you're struggling. It doesn't always necessarily mean either that that person's going to take time out of their schedule, because most of the time these people are doing a lot of their own deals. So it doesn't mean that they're going to be available all the time to answer your questions. So the other structure that I found, like for instance, the guy who mentors me or who mentored me when I first got started, he now charges like $15,000. I've heard of fortune builders, they charge about $30,000. So this is about how much people are charging people who do real mentorship. Because they know that, okay, if you get started, like for instance, like they just know over time that if you're taking action and this is what you want to do, then you can make a real income in real estate. Like I got started in 2003, 2004, and I'm still practicing real estate. So I've made back, whatever I had to invest over and over and over again. But these people typically, like for instance, the guy that I mentioned to you, everybody does it differently. So it's going to be case by case, and you'll have to negotiate your fees with people. Because, for instance, he charges $15,000, but then he also charges you 50-50 on, I think, your first 2 or 3 deals. He's been in the business just as long as I have, and that's how much he charges. So, but basically, he has there's a full educational setup. So even for myself, for instance, I don't really take anything off of anyone's deals. But, I make sure that people get the education that I've put into just my own education, because I want to make sure that I'm working with people who know what they're doing. Because it doesn't help you, like, if, for instance, if you do 50-50, somebody tells you, okay, you bring me something, and then you don't get the education, then you're always kind of hooked into working with that person, because they probably didn't really take that much time out to really show you what to do. So, okay, the next question was about the fear of buying someone's house and being obligated to pay for the house. So in that situation, and as far as wholesaling, for instance, you're not obligated, well, you are obligated to pay for it in the contract, but also you do have clauses in the contract to be able to get out of the contract. So the same thing if you were buying your regular house, if you're buying your own primary residence, and let's say there's an inspection clause, there's so many other reasons that you can get out of a contract. So if things don't go through, then you can just basically cancel your contract as long as you're within the terms of the contract. So you just have to make sure, that's another reason why you want to have a mentor who knows what they're doing, because you need to make sure that things are structured properly. I mean, it's the same thing. I look at, like, let's say, for instance, going to get your taxes done. You know, if somebody doesn't do your taxes properly, even though they say they're a tax preparer, you could be screwed and owe the IRS a lot of money. So definitely it's the same thing with real estate. You want to make sure that people know what they're doing because, of course, it is a legal binding contract. So you need to make sure that the terms are structured properly. So if something comes up, you can't wholesale the house. You can't find you a buyer. You can just get out of your contract. You're not out of a lot of money. And as far as getting into the contract, the amount, same thing as buying a regular house. The amount of your deposit is variable. So, for instance, like, it could be, like, a lot of times in my contracts, I delay that deposit. So it's an earnest money deposit that's required. I normally delay that so that I'm not putting it up until later. But if somebody asks for it up front, you know, you could say, okay, well, I'll give you $100. And typically you're not giving it to the other person. You're putting it in an escrow account. So the same thing with buying a regular house. But I've had, like, all that amount is negotiable. Like, I've had some sellers, for instance, one time there was a condo over on Connecticut Avenue, and that seller wanted $22,000. So you know that if you don't have $22,000 and that person wants to deposit in the account within 24 hours in the escrow account, then that's not going to be a deal that you can do. Either that, or you'll have to quickly call up somebody that you're going to partner with, that other investor, and see if he'll put the deposit up. But if he's not going to put it up, then you just know that it's a deal that you're going to have to pass on. And a lot of these deals, each deal is case by case. So there's really no, I mean, even though it sounds like a lot of this is customary, when you're in real estate, you'll find that a lot of little things will come up. And there's really no one size fits all, because no one can really tell you what a seller is going to agree to when you get in front of them. They may have, like, a lot of other people making offers on their house, and they could just be set on a certain dollar amount. Like that one person I mentioned, he was set on $22,000. He wasn't budging from that. But that doesn't mean that the next person wouldn't accept $100. So it's all negotiable. Real estate, the purchase price is negotiable. The deposits are negotiable. Everything is negotiable. So let's see. Hi, Stacy. I'm looking here in the questions. So the next one I see is, should you market yourself as a real estate investor or wholesaler? Will this help you find investors to buy? That's probably a good question. I typically, like, on my business cards, I say that I'm an investor, because a homeowner is not going to know. Most homeowners do not know what a wholesaler is. They're not really familiar with all that. So wholesaling is not something where, like, for instance, like, I didn't know about wholesaling until I actually met the person who mentored me. So wholesaling is not something that a lot of people are familiar with. So it's easier just to say that you're an investor, which it is a type of investing. And that's just the easier way to go about it, because most people are familiar with just saying you're an investor and they know what that is. But as far as, like, when you're looking for your rehabbers, then that's when those people will know what a wholesaler is. So when you're going out and you're coming across people who are like your investor buyers, when you're building your buyers list, you can say that you're a wholesaler because they know what a wholesaler is. But if you're talking to a regular homeowner, more than likely they're not going to know. If you say you're wholesaling, I mean, maybe people will know. I mean, some people do. Of course, if they're getting a lot of offers, they'll say, oh, you wholesaling. Maybe they've done research online. I mean, you know, there's a lot more information online than what there used to be. But typically, if I was dealing with a homeowner, I would just say that I'm an investor. Because also, too, you know, once you get into real estate, like, for instance, for myself, like, I also have a real estate license. And also, sometimes, too, I'll work as a group with other people. We'll package together different deals. And so in that situation, when I'm going into it, I'm very general. And the reason why I'm doing this is because until I actually evaluate, like, I got to see the inside of the house, see what the repairs are, and things like that. So if I haven't seen inside the house, then I don't even know which way I want to go about it. Because if I get in front of somebody and they say, oh, well, they want market value, let's say the house is, like, in bad shape, but they want $100,000. And I know if I'm going to give it to a rehabber, you know, maybe I'd have to offer like $50,000, and this person is stuck on $100,000. So in that case, I just offer to list the person's house on MLS as a real estate agent, and that's just another way to make income. So what I normally do is I leave it open, because I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with the deal until I actually look at the numbers. So real estate is very analytical. So off the bat, it seems like there's a one size fit all, but until you see the repairs, you really don't know. Like, for instance, I have my partner, I told you she's an attorney, but she's not really into wholesaling, even though she's even a broker. So one time we came across a deal, and come to find out, the house, she offered one price. Let's say maybe she's going to make $5,000. I don't know. It wasn't really a whole lot of money. But she was able to negotiate something. Maybe it was even more than that. But she was able to negotiate something with the owner. But then later, when they came back to look at the house, they didn't realize that it was a bunch of mold in the basement. So in that situation, she was only able to get like $3,000 out of the deal. She had actually wholesaled it to somebody else that was they were a rehabber. But, just offhand, and actually, really, she was going to try to list the house. She really doesn't wholesale. This was actually like her first wholesale deal. She was really going to list the house, but the person didn't want to work with a real estate agent. So that's another thing that you'll encounter, is that everybody's going to have their preferences. And that's why, personally, and I guess I can give it a disclaimer, of course, everybody can decide what they want to do and what's best for them. But I think that it's better to have more options available. So if somebody wants full price, I list it. Sometimes you'll find if you're just working as a wholesaler, you don't have a license, then you can't do much with that, because if they want market value, then you can't do that. And I know now recently people are getting into what's called wholetailing, and that's a whole nother aspect to it. But basically, instead of wholesaling a house to a rehabber, they're wholesaling houses to what's called a retail buyer. So somebody who was just a regular home buyer would be the person coming in to buy the house, versus just a rehabber who's going to come in and fix the house up. So that's one thing. That's one way now that people are making extra money, because they're still wholesaling, so they're still allowed to sign the contract, but they don't have a real estate license. And for me, I like to avoid all that trouble. So, because sometimes it can get sticky, because again, you're not representing anybody's interest because you don't have a real estate license, and that's why you're wholesaling by signing your contract. But if you're in a situation where people perceive you to be doing certain things and you're not licensed to do that, then that's when you can get into problems. Because in real estate, everything too is about disclosure. So you got to disclose everything, especially if you have a license. Let's see. Which should you market yourself as okay? The other question was, will this help you to find investors to buy? So investors. One thing I want to say about the investors, most investors don't care. So most investors, as long as the number works, you're going to find most people are going to try to haggle you down, because most investors, they don't really, they want to make more money for themselves. So most people are going to try to haggle you on the prices. But as far as how you represent yourself to them, most people know what a wholesaler is. So, they're not going to, like people that I work with that buy properties, let's say they're buying like 5 and 6 a month, they don't really care. The only thing they're worried about is the numbers on the deal. So if they can make money, they're good. If they can't make money, then there's going to be a problem. But that's what they're primarily concerned about. Okay, so another question is, do I need leads or investors first? And that's a good question. I always say I start with leads, especially if you're in a hot market. When I say leads, I mean seller leads. And that's one of the reasons why I started the Gain More Leads Challenge. It's because I've just found from my experience that it's better to start with getting in front of sellers. Because in real estate, everything starts with the sellers. If you don't have sellers, then basically you don't have a deal. And so basically you need a contract. So as far as wholesaling, you need to meet with sellers. You need to be in the business of making offers. And you need sellers for that. And the reason why is because I think the comfort zone is for people to start with the buyers, because most people feel like, okay, well, I don't want to deal with a seller, and I don't have buyers lined up, because they feel like having a buyer would be easier, which would be true over time. Of course, if you have your network of buyers you're going to, then things will be easier. But the reason why I find that it's easier to start with the sellers is because a lot of buyers will try to steer you for what they want. And it doesn't necessarily mean that. So sometimes you could end up like limiting your options, dealing with people who are going to tell you, oh, I want this, I want that. They're going to tell you what they want, but that doesn't mean that what you're coming across. So it's better for you to have like sellers, and then look for those buyers based upon the deals that you come across. Like for instance, when I get certain deals under contract, like for instance, even the deal I just told you about with my partner, she had it under contract. Once you start advertising your deal, I mean, you'll have people call you. People will start harassing you for properties. If you're finding stuff and it's in like certain locations that are highly desirable, you will start having people harass you. It gets really bad. Like once you start finding good deals, you may have 15 people calling you in one day about a deal. I know for us, we had to like institute an answering service or having other people answer the phone. We had to set up a whole system just to be able to deal with the amount of calls that are coming in. So I say start with the sellers and getting things under contract, because typically if you're finding stuff that's not a good deal, then you're not going to get many phone calls. But dealing with the buyers, if you deal with them first, and I'm not saying don't deal with any buyers. Of course, you could look for buyers, like network. Of course, it's always good to network and meet people, but don't be so focused on looking for buyers and then you don't have any sellers, because at the end of the day, you'll have all these buyers, but then you won't have any deals. So, you'll meet with people. A lot of times, once you get into real estate, everybody will want to meet with you. Everybody will say, oh, let's get together, this, that, all this other stuff. Most of these people are looking, like the way that real estate, I guess, how it trickles down. Most people, they want to meet with you because they know that the business starts on the seller side. So even somebody that's a title attorney, for example, they don't have any business until there's actually somebody that wants to sell their house. So from a professional standpoint, those people understand that the real estate starts with the seller. And so that's why they're interested in meeting with you, talking about what you do. And there's nothing wrong with having a network, but you just want to make sure that what you're looking for is going to fit your needs versus trying to source stuff based upon what other people are telling you they want. Because some people, you'll source stuff and you'll find out everything you bring them, they're going to tell you, oh no, it's got to be this price. Oh no, it's got to be that. And then you find out you're running around, but you're not making any money. So that's just what I found from that. Hi, Stacy. How are you? So, okay, another question is, so I'm just taking questions here. It's Ask Me Anything. So I'm kind of going through them. The next one is, how do you know what a profitable flip is? So, okay, to answer that question, I'm going to just give you a response based upon an investor that I closely work with. For instance, from his perspective, he likes to have a minimum of $40,000. An ideal flip would be something where you can go, it doesn't need a lot of work done to it. So like, let's say it just needs carpet, paint, more cosmetic, everything you see on the exterior. So like cabinets, bathrooms, paint, carpet, he can get in and get out and make about $40,000. And so of course, in order to calculate that, you got to look at what the property is fixed up or selling for. Then you've got to back out the construction costs. And then you've got to, of course, also back out like your settlement costs with the attorney, and those numbers. But typically, as far as your net profit, he's looking to make about $40,000. Sometimes it could be less than that. Let's say sometimes it could be 30. But the thing is, too, is that you want to make sure you're making a good cushion, because then also, too, you may have other holding costs. Like, of course, you're going to pay the water, got to pay the electric, you're going to have to pay insurance. So you got to back all of those out based upon how much you're going to be able to sell the property for on the back end. Also, like your realtor fees, if you're going to hire a real estate agent to list the property for you, all that's got to be taken out. So once you back all that out and you see you still have a profit, for instance, in his case, he wants $40,000, then it's a good deal. And the reason why I say like cosmetic and $40,000 is because we were having a conversation about this lately. And, he does a lot of houses. He does about like maybe 5-6 houses a month, even more. But the reason why we were saying this was because if you get a house that's a whole gut job, then you've got to look at how long is it going to take you to repair that house. So if you come up to a house, you see the stairs are going sideways, the roof is off the house, there's no heating, there's no cooling, the electric's got to be upgraded. If you see all these repairs, then you're going to be in that deal for a longer amount of time. So, full gut job, could be over $100,000. And so you have to be able to analyze. First of all, you need to start off by being able to analyze how much the fixed up properties are going for. So so basically looking at, and people call it after repair value, but basically when you're looking at the houses, how much are the houses selling for that you're going to want to sell your house for once you finish modernizing it. So like once you finish putting in the cabinets, the kitchen, the floors, the paint, the plumbing, the electric, once you put all that in, how much are those properties selling for? And when you're analyzing your numbers, you want to try to make sure that you're looking at properties that are like at least within a half a mile. But if you're in certain places, let's say you're in the city, I mean, sometimes it can even become block by block. So you really need to stay within close proximity to your property that you're analyzing to see what those properties are going for. Once you find that, you just basically back out all your expenses from that to get to how much profits are left from that. And if you're wholesaling, then basically too, you would have, or if you're getting it from a wholesaler, then you've got to back out what your profit, those profit margins as well. So like if you're paying somebody $20,000 as a wholesale fee, then that's got to come out of it as well. And so really it depends on the investors you're working with. A lot of investors, you know, people have different margins they want to work with. And again, it depends on how much work is required in order to come up with those numbers. So it's really like a little bit more technical that goes into like doing the calculations. A lot of investors, they like to be at like anywhere, people will say 50%, but nowadays in this market, you know, getting something at 50% after repair value is probably not realistic. Some investors are going up to like 70% of after repair value, and that's how much they're willing to pay after they back all their fees out. Of course, like 70%, then you got to back out the construction costs. Let's see. Okay, great, Stacy. I see you're getting your license. That's good. I think having a license is also good because then you can actually have access to the MLS. Because that's another thing. When you're a wholesaler, you don't have access and you're trying to scrounge around for comps. Sometimes it could be a headache, but if you also have a friend who's a realtor or a family member, you can even ask them to pull your comps for you. But basically, the real estate agents are going to have like access to the best data. So I see Ann says, how do you get properties under contract? And someone else asks, how do you find leads? Okay, so as far as finding leads, of course, you could do pre-foreclosures. You could join the challenge. In that challenge, I'm actually showing you how to get leads from the courthouse. So what I'll do is I'll drop the link below because depending upon the type of leads you're looking for, especially from the courthouse, it's a different way to go about it. But also some people like just do driving for dollars. I mean, driving for dollars is basically like going around looking for vacant properties. So that would be another way to look for leads. So there's different ways to go about looking for leads depending upon like the type of leads that you're looking for. But I would say, like I found from experience, some of the best leads are from the courthouse because you know that those people have like a predetermined condition. The fact that they're at the courthouse, most people have to do something. And so that's why getting them from the courthouse is like the best place. And also too, because you know that that's the source of where everybody else is getting the leads from anyway. So like, let's say you were buying a foreclosure list, more than likely that foreclosure list is coming from the courthouse. So basically by you getting the leads directly from the courthouse, you know that you're getting like firsthand information. So someone else, let's see. Okay, so how do you get properties under contract? In that situation, once you, of course, do your due diligence, you're going around, you're looking at the construction that needs to be done. You have a contract with you. Normally what I do is when I'm first having my appointment with the seller, you know, I'm already prepared. I've got my comps with me. I've got my contract with me. I have everything with me. And so at that point, I'm basically just telling the seller, okay, well, look, based upon what I've seen so far, this is how much I can offer you. This is how much, you know, I'm willing to offer for your house. And so then I just go ahead about putting together the contract. So the contract I have has about a couple of pages, actually 2 pages, but it goes through all the different terms. And so I don't necessarily get into reading everything to them because, of course, too, it's up to them. Like some people want to get an attorney to review it. By law, they have that right. So, you know, you could just basically go ahead and write your contract out. If they want to have their attorney review it, you can have them review it. But basically, you need to come to your appointment prepared with your contract. So you need to already have done like due diligence in order to know that what you're offering is about right. So that will take some practice. And so Brandy says, what's the MLS? That's a multiple listing service. So that's the database of all the realtors. When you see properties that are listed for sale with realtors, that's the database that they're listing their properties in, is the multiple listing service. And so some other people do have access to that database, like if you're an appraiser. But of course it varies by location, because each like state or each jurisdiction has like its own listing service. So it'll depend on, you know, where you are and what it takes to be able to access that. So she says, okay, what do you do when you find a vacant property? as a lead. Basically what I do is I go in and find out who owns the property. So I'll do what's called, we call it like a skip trace. But basically I'll skip trace it or be able to do research, like looking up the tax record and see who owns that property, and then I call the owner. So that's the way that I go about it. If I find a property that's vacant, and then I call the owner, and then of course it's vacant, but I'll just ask the owner if they're looking to sell their property. So that's typically how I would handle that one. And so for those of you that are looking to get started and you're ready to get started, at least by finding leads, I can go ahead and send you the information to join the leads challenge. And the thing is too that I want to mention is that, okay, so we've talked about different things this evening, but one thing is that even if you're not ready to make offers on properties, you can at least get your feet wet by starting off as a property scout. And a property scout is just somebody who gets leads, and you could even go as far as calling the leads to see if they want an appointment. And typically rehabbers will pay you for that. I mean, even if you didn't even call them and you just had the leads, you were doing administrative work, people will pay you for those leads. Like I know one vendor that sells probate leads for about $600 every 3 months. So, if you're not ready to actually like go and make offers on properties, real estate is more so just about being in the business. So then again, I mean, the same thing, the same way you have your list, you could find other people who are willing to buy your list. So you could network, instead of telling rehabbers that you're ready to you have things under contract because you haven't gotten that far. You just ask them, do they buy leads, or are they interested in leads? And they'll tell you, okay, yeah, I am. And how much, you can negotiate how much you're willing to pay or how much they can pay for them. For instance, I taught one lady the same thing that I'm teaching you guys in that challenge. I taught one lady to do that. Somebody was paying her $3 a lead to go down to the courthouse to get the information. So, it's not something where, if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to jump right in there and start making offers. I kind of suggest that if you want to get into real estate, it's best to go ahead and try to go as far as you can in a deal, because that way you make more income. So if you're already calling the person, you're able to get an appointment, then it would behoove you to try to get more out of the deal versus just passing it on to somebody else and maybe they give you $500, where you may have a deal where you could get paid, even if you got paid a portion of it, maybe you get about $7,500. So the amount of compensation is really different based upon what you can negotiate with people. And even if you don't know what you're doing, if you have somebody else that's kind of helping you out with it, you can make more money. Like even when I told you about my partner, she was able to get $3,000. Whereas if she had just passed that same lead off and got the appointment to somebody else, maybe they would have given her $500. So it's a big difference in compensation based upon what you're willing to do. And I know most people think you have to know everything up front, but a lot of it you learn as you go along. So you learn by experience, because there's a lot of information out there. I mean, you could probably kill yourself getting all the information there is about real estate, but you really won't know what you're doing until you get started. So I would say, like, worst case, you don't want to get stuff under contract, just go ahead and pass the leads off to other people. Just get the leads and pass them off and get paid that way. But if you're willing to take a little bit more risk, you don't mind going and talking to people and negotiating, then in that case, you could go ahead and just try making offers on properties. I've even had like people who were 18, 19, going around and making offers on properties that they couldn't buy, but they were able to negotiate. One guy, for instance, he was 18 at Howard. He was able to go and negotiate with a seller. He came across over $1 million deal. So if you're not afraid, it's always better to just try to go as far as you can in a deal versus just passing it off to somebody else and then they're going to give you like a couple $100. So someone else asks, let's see, as a property scout, are you able to look up inventory, or is it just on your own basis? Well, okay, as far as property scouting, just keep in mind, like when you're looking for leads, the more you build your own list, the less competition there is. So like if you're buying a list from somebody, there's other people who are buying that same list. So that's the one advice that I have. I mean, you can buy a list. So let's say, you go online and you buy a list of foreclosures, for example. I mean, you can do that. But then keep in mind that other people probably have that same list. Or let's say absentee owners, because that's the one that most people say to start with is absentees. And absentees, most of the time, may not even really be motivated. But you can go and buy a list of absentee owners. Let's say you pay between 8 cents, 10 cents, something like that per lead. and you can work those, but just keep in mind that more than likely, it's a lot more competition and the people are a lot less motivated. Whereas if you were to go out on your own and put more effort into it by going and like looking at vacant properties, whatever properties you come up with, doesn't mean that other people are going to have that same list, because most people don't want to spend the time to do the legwork. So most people want what's easy, and so that's why they're just going and trying to buy a list and hoping that they can get something with that. But technically, like in real estate, you know, by you going, like let's say you go to the courthouse, you go every 2 weeks. Well, you're probably beating the people at the courthouse who are just like maybe buying a list from somebody, or, you know, somebody that's compiling a list for a bunch of other people. So I think that it's better, personally, I think it's better to actually like build your own list based upon your own efforts than what it is to buy a list. But in some instances, depending upon your state, you know, you have to also follow whatever the rules are. So, you know, depending, like let's say probates for every county may not be available because the courts just may not release the information that way. So in that case, there's nothing you can do about it. So in that case, like if you can't get the list, that's what the rules are. Nobody else is getting the list that way either. But in some instances where you can actually go to the courthouse and build your own list, then it'd be better for you to do that. And some courthouses actually do have the data online, but it's very rare that you get it that way. Let's see. So any other questions for this evening? I'm looking here to see if there's any others that may be something that I missed. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll drop the challenge below for those who are interested in going to get lists from their actual courthouse. And again, you can use that list to actually be a bird dog, aka property scout. You can use it as a wholesaler. You can, even if you're a real estate agent, you can use that list to get your own listing. So basically, you can use that list for anything. So she says, property scout, you able to look up inventory. Property in Maryland versus Georgia. She's talking about location. But I don't know, what do you mean as far as property, like buying property there or rehabbing it? I'm not sure. If you can expand on what the question is. Do you mean looking up the inventory in Maryland or Georgia? Or do you mean like somebody who's rehabbing in Maryland or Georgia? Or investing in Maryland or Georgia? Where's a good start buying? I always suggest that people start with their own local market. I think that's easiest. I've seen a lot of people where now everyone's getting into this virtual wholesaling, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just keep in mind, a lot of times when you're dealing with people other places, it's just a lot more hurdles, because then you have to rely on other people. So like, for instance, let's say, for instance, it's one thing if you're just selling people leads. Like if you're working as a property scout, that one's easy, because you know you go get the leads, people just pay you for the leads and you're done. But when you get into trying to, let's say, for instance, you have leads and you're trying to get somebody to go meet with the seller and negotiate with the seller, unless you know that that person is really a good salesperson, you may have all these leads and then you find out that you're trying to coordinate with somebody else and you can't close the deal because maybe that person's just not good at meeting with sellers. So it really takes time, I think, when you're dealing with people like just other places, to be able to really close something. I found that even for myself, like I had one lady that used to contact me. She was, I think, in Mississippi, and she would always say, oh, okay, well, I have buyers who want, like, people want these package deals. They want 10 deals, 12 deals. But keep in mind, when you're on the internet, a lot of times there's a lot more fakesters, like people that are not even, I mean, you can't, it's difficult to even really get that far. So you have to have a good handle on who you're dealing with. Because she may say, okay, well, I have this, I have that. You spent all this time getting the contract signed. And then come to find out that those people that she has are not even real buyers. So I think a lot of times it's easier to work locally because you have more control. You have more control over your deal. But once you start to bring other people into the deal, especially if you've never dealt with them before, you don't know who they are. It's harder for you to figure out who's real and who's not real, and who has the characteristics or who has the qualities to be able to close these deals. So you could end up doing a lot more work and closing a lot less deals. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I know there are a lot of people who are into this virtual stuff, and finding people. And I guess if you have good, those people are good, you know, that they're about their business, then that's fine. But I think it's harder to weed people out when you can't really see them. Like, for instance, if I'm looking for a rehabber in Maryland, then what I normally do is I'll go see their other rehabs. So I'll go check out their other deals because I'm seeing that this person is real. But sometimes when you're looking at stuff online, people can have all this stuff set up and you think that they're real, and they're not. You know, they may not really have the cash, but then they'll spend all this time. They'll spend a lot of your time you looking for the deals. You know, then they want you to sign this non-circumvent, all these other documentations. Then at the end of the day, you spend all this time going back and forth and find out that, okay, this person, somebody is not real here. So I just think sometimes it could be a waste of time. Not saying that, you know, there's anything wrong with doing it virtually if you can find a good team. So I would say start with your own market and then expand from there. So like, even if I would start looking at the county and then expand out that way. So like, let's say you're in Georgia, you could start one, like let's say you were in Fulton County. You know, you see it's too much competition there. Well, okay, choose like 2 or 3 other counties that are nearby. So that's what I would normally do. He says, do I have mentors that I would suggest in Maryland? Well, no, not really. I don't have anybody that I would like suggest offhand, like where I've looked for people recently. Like for myself, for instance, I actually like coach people online. But I don't have like anybody that I know of that like takes on people to mentor them. I would have to ask them. It'd be more of like a case by case type of thing, because most people that I know, you know, they're not necessarily into mentorship. They're more into doing their own deals. And then like I told you, like in most situations, people that are doing their deals, they say, okay, well, I'll do 50-50 or something like that. But it'd be more like a case by case type of situation. So let's see. Great advice. Okay, you're welcome. Yeah, so I guess that's it for today. I need to go turn my AC on. It got kind of hot in here. But if there's any other questions, just feel free to go ahead and drop them in the group, and I'll come back and answer them. And then also for the challenge, I'll go ahead and drop the link for the challenge for those of you who want to join. So at least you can start looking for deals. And I said, like, don't be afraid. You know, because real estate is just about being in the business of real estate. So like looking for sellers, networking with other people, you know, asking questions. That's how you're going to learn in the long run, is by going about it that way. If you get easily frustrated, if you're like, because for instance, sometimes people start and they're just looking for money. So if you're looking for money, you can like burn yourself out, because real estate is not always, like, some people luck up and they get a deal quick, but it's not really something. Real estate is not a liquid asset, and typically you're dealing with people who have a lot of life situations that are on the other side, like that are selling the house. So it could be like other people involved. So it could be a lot going on. And so it may not be, if you're looking for quick money, then that may not be the case. So, okay, well, bye everyone for now. And so I'll go ahead and drop the link below for the challenge. And any other comments, just go ahead and drop them in the group. Okay, bye-bye.